Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Craig Spence. I'm Director of Media and Communications at the International Paralympic Committee. Thank you for coming here today and missing some sport for this press conference, which is on the IPC's decision regarding the membership status of the Russian Paralympic Committee. Today I am joined by 3 members of the IPC Governing Board. To my right is IPC President Sir Philip Carven, a 5-time Paralympian. To his right is the IPC Vice President Andrew Parsons. And then on the far right is Todd Nicholson, who is the chairperson of the IPC Athletes Council and a 5-time Paralympian in ice sledge hockey. Just to make you aware that today we are going to probably do quite a lengthy press conference. We have gathered a lot of data, we have gathered a lot of facts, and our aim is to be as transparent as possible with you in today's press conference. The facts that we have that we can legally share with you at the moment, we will do. The press release from this press conference, together with the speeches from Sir Philip, and our athletes chair Todd Nicholson, will be made available on the IPC website, paralympic.org, shortly after the end of this press conference. The format will be Sir Philip will give quite a lengthy address regarding the IPC's decision and the basis for that, and then Todd Nicholson will give the viewpoint of the athletes on the IPC's decision. Following that, we will then take questions from the floor, and then afterwards we will give interviews, starting with the broadcasters, and then we will do some pool interviews with written media. So, I will now hand over to our President, Sir Philip Carven, to take the lead.
Thank you, Craig. Good afternoon, everybody. On Monday, the 18th of July, Professor Richard McLaren published his independent person report into allegations of doping at the Sochi 2014 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. His findings revealed a state-sponsored doping program implemented ahead of the Sochi Games, which was designed to give Russian athletes a competitive advantage over their rivals. In my view, and in the view of every member of the IPC Governing Board, the McLaren report marked one of the darkest days in the history of all sport. It was a body blow for everyone who is committed to clean, fair, and honest competition. It questioned the integrity and credibility of sport as we all know it, and has left me and many others deeply saddened. On Friday the 22nd of July, after fully evaluating the report and additional information, the IPC received from the report's author, the IPC Governing Board opened suspension proceedings against our member, the Russian Paralympic Committee, in light of its apparent inability to fulfill its IPC membership responsibilities and obligations, in particular its obligation to comply with the IPC Anti-Doping Code and the World Anti-Doping Code. Over the last 16 days, there have been a number of sleepless nights, as our priority has been to establish the full facts in respect of parasport. A decision of this magnitude must be evidence-based and not influenced by the many and varied views of other people or organizations outside of the IPC and the Paralympic movement. As a result, we have taken various steps to gather as much evidence as possible in order to
levando em
inform
conta as
our
evidências,
final
e
decision.
vamos informar nossa
I'd now
decisão
like to
final.
share with you
Agora
some
quero
of the key
compartilhar
steps
com
taken
vocês
and
algumas
the
etapas
facts
dos
that have
processos de
been
decisão.
established. Step one, which is
Primeiro
further
passo
investigation of the
é uma
disappearing
investigação
positive
mais
samples.
profunda
The
desses,
McLaren report identified 35
dessas
samples
amostras,
related to Paralympic sport, where
e
between
como
2012
esses
and
dados se
2015,
referem aos
a liaison
Jogos
person
Paralímpicos.
within the Moscow laboratory notified the
pessoa
Russian
do laboratório
Deputy
russo
Minister of Sport
informou
following a positive
ao ministro
screen
do esporte
result.
depois
Following this
de uma
information,
amostra positiva.
samples were marked
Dessa
either as
informação,
quarantine or saved.
Algumas amostras foram
This
marcadas
meant
como
that the
seguras
positive
ou
result
em
was
quarentena.
either progressed as
E
usual
depois esses
or
resultados
was covered up
foram levados
and
adiante
reported
ou foram
as a negative.
encobertos ou
The corruption
relatados
of that
como
system is
negativo.
a fundamental breach
Esse
of both the
sistema
World
revelou
Anti-Doping
ter
Code
falhas graves
and the IPC Anti-Doping Code.
junto ao
Following a
IPC e
request
suas
from the
normas.
IPC on Monday the
O
18th
IPC
of July,
pediu,
the
no
same
dia
day as the
18 de
report was
julho,
published,
no mesmo dia da publicação
Professor
desse
McLaren
relatório,
provided the names of the
e o
athletes
professor
associated with
McLaren
the
deu o
35
nome
samples
dos
on
atletas
Thursday, the
envolvidos.
21st of July.
No dia 21
Together with
de
the
julho,
dates the samples were provided,
junto
the
com
possible
as
substance
amostras
the athletes
e
tested positive
o
for,
tipo de
the sample
substância que
code
foi
numbers,
testado
and whether the
positivo
sample had been marked quarantine
e
or saved.
se essas amostras
As
tinham
this is an
sido
ongoing
marcadas como
live
seguras ou
investigation,
em quarentena.
Professor McLaren's
Depois
team
dessa
yesterday
investigação,
morning
ontem,
provided the
o professor
IPC
McLaren
with
deu
an
ao
additional
IPC
10 samples relating to
outras
9
10
athletes
amostras
that were
referentes a
part
9
of the
atletas
disappearing positive
que
methodology.
fizeram parte desses
In total,
positivos que
the
sumiram.
IPC now has
Agora,
information
o IPC
on
tem
45
informação
samples
de
relating
45
to
amostras
44 athletes.
referentes a 44 atletas.
From these data, the IPC
Desses
determined in
dados,
what
o IPC
sports
determinou
the 44
quais
athletes compete,
esportes
with the
esses
exception
atletas
of one
competem,
individual
e com exceção de indivíduo
that has not been
que
identified
não
yet.
foi identificado.
Our research revealed that
Nossa
17 of
pesquisa
the
revelou que
45
17 desses
samples
44
originate from athletes who
atletas
participate in sports that are either not
são
on
de
the Paralympic
atletas que
program
participam
or
de
from
esportes que
whose
não são do programa
international
paralímpico
or from
ou
international federations
que
that are
são
not
de
recognized by
federações
the
que não são
IPC.
reconhecidas pelo IPC.
This leaves 27 samples
Isso
that are related to athletes
deixa
in 8
27 amostras
parasports
que
that are
são
part of the
referentes a
current
8
Paralympic
esportes
sport program.
paralímpicos.
5 of the 8 sports
5
are
desses
summer
8
sports,
esportes
whilst
são
3
de
are winter
verão
sports.
e outros 3 são
Some
de
of the
inverno.
parasports associated with the 27 samples are ones that the IPC governs as the International Federation, whilst others are non-IPC sports that are governed by other international federations. At least 11 of the 27 parasport samples were marked save by the Moscow laboratory. This means that positive samples from these para-athletes were subsequently reported as a negative and the athletes faced no punishment. It must be stressed that all these findings have been discovered following just 76 days of investigation by Professor McLaren and his team. They believe that there are likely to be even more samples that were included in the disappearing positive methodology.
Isso faz parte
With Professor
do
McLaren's
processo de
mandate
desapareceu.
extended by WADA, the IPC awaits further supporting evidence and would like to once again extend our thanks to him and his team for their efforts so far and their swift responses to our many
Está
questions.
sendo avaliada
Step 2.
também por esse órgão.
Testing of
Segundo
21
passo,
samples from
teste
the
de
Sochi
21
2014 Paralympic
dos
Winter Games.
Jogos Olímpicos
The
de
McLaren
inverno,
report also
Paralímpicos de
uncovered
inverno,
that during the Sochi
e também
2014
descobrimos
Olympic
que
Winter
durante os
Games,
Jogos
a
de
sample
2014,
swapping system
Jogos de
operated in
inverno,
the Sochi laboratory,
houve uma troca
involving
de
samples
amostras
provided
dentro do
by
laboratório de
Russian
Sochi.
athletes. Following further investigations
Depois
since the
de uma
report's
mais profunda
publication,
investigação,
the IPC now has evidence
IPC
that the
agora
same
tem
abhorrent
evidências
practices
que as
also
mesmas
took
práticas
place during the Sochi
deploráveis também
2014
aconteceram
Paralympic Winter
durante
Games.
os Jogos de
On
2014
Friday, the
os Jogos
22nd of July,
Paralímpicos
the
de
IPC
inverno.
sent 21
Depois disso,
samples from
o
7
IPC
Russian
mandou
para-athletes
21
who
amostras
competed at
de
Sochi
atletas russos
2014 to London for further
competiram em
forensic
2014
examination.
para
These samples were
mais
selected principally
análises
by the
que
investigation
foram
team on
investigadas
an
pelo time de
intelligence-led
investigação,
basis, together with a small number of
junto
additional
com
samples chosen
outras
by the
amostras
IPC.
escolhidas aleatoriamente pelo
Upon
IPC.
receipt, the
Recebendo
laboratory
essas
found that 2
amostras,
samples had sediment
descobrimos que
in the
duas
cap, which
dessas
meant they could
amostras
not be tested,
tinham sedimentos
leaving
dentro
19
da
samples
cápsula
that could be
que
properly
deixou
examined.
intestável.
Of these, forensic
outras,
examination
as
established
examinações
that the
forensicas
caps of 18 bottles of those 19 showed
descobriram que
scratches
18
and
dos
marks that were
19
consistent with those found
tinham
on the Sochi
ranhuras
2014
que são
Olympic Games
consistentes
samples, where caps were removed and
com a
reused.
remoção das
Just
tampas
one of the
e
19
reusadas
samples was
essas
found
cápsulas.
to be untampered with.
E só uma
On
amostra
Saturday, the 6th of
estava
August, the
intacta.
IPC received DNA
Depois
analysis,
disso,
which
recebemos
confirms
análises de
the
DNA
clean
que
urine which was
confirma,
swapped comes from the same
que
athlete.
confirma que as trocas de
According to the
urina
McLaren
dessas cápsulas
investigation team,
é
the bottles
consistente
examined
com
are
esses
a
atletas que
representative
foram
sample that
investigados.
indicates that Russian Paralympic athletes were
Tudo isso
included
indica
in the broader doping scheme.
que
They believe
todo
that
esse
further
processo faz parte
investigations will
desse,
uncover many more samples involved in the program. Now
dessa
that these data
armação
have corroborated
feita
the
pelos
claim
laboratórios
that the
russos.
state-directed scheme involved Russian Paralympic athletes,
Isso
the IPC
leva a crer
plans
que
to
os atletas
reanalyze
paralímpicos
every
russos
Russian
estavam
sample
envolvidos
from the Sochi
nesse esquema,
2014 Paralympic Winter
tanto
Games
nos
in the
Jogos
coming
de
months.
2014
The
quanto
IPC
de
is
inverno
also
e verão.
seeking further advice
O IPC
from the
está
IPC Anti-Doping
procurando o
Committee
Conselho
and WADA on what measures can be
WADA
taken to address
e outros
the athletes
órgãos
associated
antidoping
with these
para
samples,
saber como
including
proceder,
advice on results management.
inclusive com
Excuse me.
relação aos resultados objetivos naqueles jogos, obtidos
Step
naqueles
3.
jogos.
Di-
Terceiro
dialogue
passo,
with the Russian
diálogo
Paralympic
com
Committee.
o Comitê Olímpico
In accordance
Paralímpico
with the
Russo,
IPC suspension policy, the IPC provided sufficient
a
time
política de
to
suspensão
allow
do
the Russian
IPC
Paralympic
dá
Committee to present
tempo ao
its case
Federação
to the
Russa para
IPC.
apresentar sua
On Friday,
defesa
the
ao
29th of
IPC.
July,
E
they provided
29
written
de
submissions
julho,
to the IPC governing
eles nos
board
deram a defesa
for
escrita
consideration.
que
On Wednesday, the 3rd of August,
apreciamos.
a 7-person delegation
3 de
from the
agosto,
Russian Paralympic Committee
membro do
visited
Comitê
the
Russo
IPC's
Paralímpico
headquarters in Bonn, Germany,
visitou o
to
IPC
additionally present their
na
arguments in
Alemanha
person
para
before the
apresentar sua
IPC
defesa
governing board.
pessoalmente.
12 IPC governing board members
12 membros do
participated
IPC participaram
in the 3-hour-long meeting,
na
which
reunião
also
que durou
provided
3
an
horas,
opportunity
que
for
também foi
both
uma
parties to
oportunidade
enter
das
into
duas
dialogue
partes
and ask
dialogarem,
and answer questions of each other.
perguntar e responder
After the
perguntas.
meeting, the board
Depois dessa
convened
reunião,
for a further 2.5 hours
o Conselho
to
se
discuss the
reuniu
evidence
por
it
2
had
horas e
before
meia
it.
para
Questions that
discutir
could
as
not be answered
evidências.
fully in the meeting were
Vimos
responded to within
perguntas que
24
não foram
hours
totalmente
in writing
respondidas durante
by both parties.
a reunião.
After
E foram
taking these steps and drawing
foram
together
escritas
the evidence
perguntas
in the
novas.
time frame
Depois desse
available,
período,
the IPC governing board, a group that includes
Conselho
6
do
Paralympians,
IPC
then took time to fully evaluate the position before
se
making its
debruçou
decision.
sobre essa questão antes
When the
de
governing
passar a
board
decisão final.
reconvened on Friday,
Quando
last
reunimos
Friday, 2
novamente,
days ago,
há 2
it
dias
was unanimous in its verdict.
para discutirmos novamente,
It is strongly of the
obteve
view that the
um
Russian Paralympic Committee
resultado
is
unânime.
currently unable to
E
ensure
chegamos à
compliance
conclusão
with
que
and the
a
enforcement
Federação Russa
of
está
the IPC's
inelegível
anti-doping code and the World
e
Anti-Doping
incapaz de
Code within
cumprir
its
as
own
resoluções
national
do IPC.
jurisdiction. Therefore, it cannot fulfill
Portanto,
its
ela não pode
fundamental
cumprir
obligations
suas
as an
obrigações
IPC member,
como membro do
and
IPC,
as a result,
e como
the IPC
resultado,
governing board has
o
resolved
Conselho do
to
IPC
suspend the Russian
resolveu
Paralympic Committee
suspender
with
o
immediate
Comitê
effect.
Paralímpico Russo.
This means that the Russian
Isso
Paralympic
quer
Committee
dizer que o
loses
Comitê
all
Russo
rights and
Paralímpico perde
privileges
todos
of
os direitos
IPC
e
membership.
privilégios
This
como membro
includes
do
not
IPC.
being able to enter
Isso inclui
para-athletes
não
into
poder
competitions
inscrever
sanctioned by
atletas
the
paralímpicos
IPC and being unable to participate
também
in IPC activities.
está fora de
The Russian
qualquer
Paralympic
atividade do
Committee will
IPC.
not be able to enter its
O Comitê
athletes into the
Paralímpico
Rio
Russo
2016
não poderá
Paralympic
inscrever
Games.
nenhum atleta para os
The
Jogos
Russian
Paralímpicos
Paralympic
do
Committee
Rio.
was informed of our decision
O
earlier
Conselho
today.
Russo
It is
Paralímpico
a
foi
decision
informado de nossa
that
decisão
has placed a huge
E
burden
isso
upon all
colocou
our
estresse
shoulders.
muito
And it's
forte
a
em todos os
decision
nossos
we've
membros.
had to take
E foi uma
in the
decisão
best
tomada
interests of the
no
Paralympic
interesse
movement
comum
today
do
and
movimento
moving
paralímpico.
forward. Ultimately, as the global governing body for the Paralympic movement,
Por último,
it is our responsibility to ensure
órgão
fair competition so that
maior
athletes can have
do esporte
confidence that they are
paralímpico para que
competing
todos
on a
tenham
level playing
confiança
field.
que estão competindo.
This is vital to the
com condições
integrity and
iguais.
credibility of Paralympic
Isso é
sport.
uma decisão
And in
vital
order to
para o
achieve
nosso
this,
esporte.
it is
E para
fundamental
chegar a
that
essas
each member
conclusões, cada
abides
membro
by the rules.
precisa
As I hope you have
cumprir
seen,
suas
before reaching our
obrigações para que
decision,
todos participem
we
em
took the
condições
necessary
iguais.
time to ask further questions
Tomamos o
of
tempo
Professor
necessário
McLaren
para
and his
fazer
investigation
perguntas ao
team
professor
to
McLaren e
await
seu
the results
time
of
de
samples
investigação
undergoing forensic
para
forensic
entender
examination
esses
and to
esses
invite the Russian
exames
Paralympic
forensicos
Committee to present its case
e dar
to the IPC and enter into
Comitê
dialogue with
Olímpico
the IPC
Paralímpico
governing
da
board.
Rússia todas as
We had
condições
to
de
establish the
defesa.
full facts of the
Tivemos que
situation.
estabelecer todos
And I
os
cannot
fatos
tell
da
you how
situação
saddened we all
e
were
não
to
posso
learn that the
expressar a minha
state-sponsored
tristeza
doping program
em
that
saber
exists
que
within Russian
Estado
sport
promoveu
regrettably
esquema de
extends
doping
to Russian
e isso se
Paralympic
estende
sport, parasport as well.
tanto aos
The
atletas
facts really do
olímpicos
hurt.
quanto aos atletas
They are an
paralímpicos.
unprecedented attack
Esses fatos
on
são
every
doloridos
clean
e
athlete
são
who
ataque
competes in
a
sport.
todos os atletas
The
que jogam limpo.
anti-doping system in
O
Russia
sistema de
is
antidoping
broken,
da Rússia está
corrupted,
quebrado,
and
corrupto
entirely
e
compromised.
totalmente comprometido.
The Paralympic movement is one
O
giant
movimento
family,
paralímpico é
and
uma
I had
família
hoped
muito
something
grande
like
e eu
this
esperava
would
que
never
algo
rear
como
its ugly
isso
head
jamais
in our
acontecesse no nosso movimento.
Everything we have
Tudo
observed goes
que
against the
observamos
very spirit of
vai
sport
contra o
and everything the
espírito
Paralympic movement
do
stands for.
esporte e tudo que
This is
as
why we feel
Paralimpíadas
that we had
representam.
no option
Por isso,
but to take this action.
sentimos que não tínhamos outra
Tragically,
opção.
this situation is not
Tragicamente,
about
essa
athletes
situação
cheating
não é
the system,
sobre atletas
but
roubarem
about
o
a
sistema,
state-run
mas
system
sistema
that is cheating the
governado pelo
athletes.
Estado que está roubando os
The doping
atletas.
culture that is polluting Russian sport
A cultura
stems
do
from the
doping
Russian
que polui a
government
Rússia
and has now been
vem
uncovered
do
in not one
governo
but
russo
two
e foi
independent
descoberto
commissioned
não
reports
só
by the
esquema
World
ou
Anti-Doping Agency.
relatório, mas foi descoberto
Our
por
decision is
dois.
driven by the
Nossa
need to
decisão foi
hold our
tomada
members
por a
accountable
necessidade
for their obligations.
de
On the basis of the evidence
de
we have,
fazermos cumprir
in the
as
current
regras.
environment, our member,
E
the Russian
nosso
Paralympic
membro,
Committee,
o
cannot
Comitê
comply
Paralímpico
with the
Russo
IPC's
não está em
anti-doping
condições de
code and the
cumprir
World
os
Anti-Doping.
códigos de ética
Those
e antidoping
obligations are
do
crucial
nosso
to the
conselho.
IPC's guarantee of fair competition for all.
Nós vamos sempre
I believe the Russian government has catastrophically
demonstrar
failed
a
its
nossa competição
para-athletes.
justa
Their
e
medals
por isso
over
eles não
morals
mais farão
mentality
parte nesse momento.
disgusts me. The complete corruption of the anti-doping
completa
system is
corrupção
contrary to the rules and
do
strikes
sistema de
at the
antidoping.
very heart of the spirit
É
of
golpe
Paralympic
no
sport.
coração
It shows
do
a blatant
esporte
disregard
paralímpico.
for the
Mostra
health
desrespeito
and well-being of
patente
athletes and quite simply
todos
has
os
no
atletas
place in
e não
Paralympic sport.
tem lugar no esporte
Their
paralímpico.
thirst for glory at all costs has severely damaged
busca da
the
glória a
integrity and
qualquer
image of all
custo
sports and has certainly
danificou
resulted in
a
a
imagem
devastating
de todo
outcome
o esporte
for the Russian Paralympic
e,
Committee
portanto,
and
teve também
para-athletes.
efeito
All members of the
devastador no
IPC
esporte
governing board
russo.
have deep
Todos os
sympathy
membros do
for
IPC
Russian para-athletes who will miss out
simpatia
on Rio
pelos
2016
atletas
Paralympic Games.
russos que vão
They
perder
are
a
part of a broken
Paralimpíada.
system, and we sincerely hope
Eles são
that the
parte
changes
de
that need
sistema
to happen
quebrado e esperamos
do
que as
happen.
mudanças sejam feitas.
Russia has some top
A
quality
Rússia
athletes
tem
across all
atletas de primeira
sports,
linha
and we look
em
forward
todos
to the
os
day
esportes.
when we can welcome the
E
Russian Paralympic
esperamos
Committee
ver
back
logo o
as a
dia
member,
em
safe
que a
in the
Rússia
knowledge
estará
that
de
it is
volta
fulfilling
como
all its
membro
obligations
e
in order to
cumprindo
ensure
todas as suas
a level
obrigações
playing field for all.
para
The
podermos
Paralympic movement has a
garantir
proud and
a
deep-rooted
igualdade de
history of
competição.
fair and honourable competition. We want to keep it this way, and we'll
Queremos
do
sempre
everything within our power to
justiça
do so.
em todas as
We want the
competições.
values that have
Queremos os
seen the
valores
Paralympic movement grow rapidly
vistos
since our creation in
no sistema
1948
paralímpico
to remain the essence of our
que sejam
future.
respeitados
We
e
want
que
people
se
to
mantenham
watch
na
Paralympic
essência
sport,
do esporte.
that watch Paralympic
Quem
sport,
assiste o esporte
that they have
paralímpico,
confidence
que eles
and
tenham
belief
confiança
in the
e
amazing
crença
feats that they see.
nos
We believe the
feitos
decision
incríveis
we
que
have
vemos
taken
no campo
will help achieve this, not just at the Rio 2016
Vamos atingir
Paralympic
isso
Games,
não só nos
but at
Jogos
all
Paralímpicos
future
do Rio, mas em
parasport
todo o
events.
esporte do
Thank
futuro
you.
paralímpico. Obrigado.
Thank you, Sir Philip, for that address.
Obrigado,
Todd,
Sr.
could
Philip.
you give a viewpoint from the athletes as the
Todd,
chair of the
você
IPC
pode dar um
Athletes
ponto de
Council?
vista dos
Thanks
atletas?
very much. Good afternoon, everyone. And after what Sir Philip,
Boa tarde a
as
todos.
Sir Philip has
Depois do
said,
que o Sr.
I just
Philip
wanted to give you the
falou,
athlete's viewpoint
Gostaria de dar
as
o
the
ponto de vista
chairperson
dos
of the International
atletas
Paralympic Committee's
como
Athletes
diretor
Council.
do Conselho
The IPC
de
Athletes
Atletas do
Council is a
IPC.
collective voice of the para-athletes
Nosso
within the
conselho
IPC
é uma voz
and the greater
coletiva
Paralympic
dos
movement.
atletas.
So we effectively act
E
as a sounding board between the views of
somos
the athletes and the IPC.
Uma voz
In recent weeks, from speaking to
uníssona
athletes
para
on the
refletir
Athletes
os
Council
pontos
and
de
a number of
vista.
other athletes, responding to their emails and seeing their posts on social
Respondemos a
media,
todas as
the topic of the
questões
Russian doping has dominated their
de
thoughts
atletas
while
e
they prepare
vimos
for the
que
next
essa
month's
questão do
Paralympic
antidoping
Games
russo
here in Rio.
tem estado na mente de todos.
Although there were a few different views,
Temos alguns
there
pontos
is
de
one
vista diferentes,
subject that all
mas
athletes are united
tema
on.
sempre
Without a
nos
doubt,
une.
all athletes are
Sem
in
dúvida,
agreement
Os atletas
that when they
todos
compete for the
concordam que
Paralympic
quando
medals,
competem pelas
they should
medalhas
do so by taking it at
devem
a level
fazê-lo
and equal playing field.
em condições iguais de
Do not
competição.
want to line up and have questions whether their main rival
Não
is a
querem
doper or not.
duvidar se os seus rivais
Fair
estão
competition
usando doping.
And a level playing field can only be
competição
achieved if
justa
everyone complies
Só pode
and abides
ser
by the rules.
atingida se todos
The evidence
cumprirem
that has
as
been pulled
regras.
together shows that within the
Essas
current doping
evidências que foram
system
juntadas
in
mostram
Russian
que o
sports,
sistema do
the
esporte
Russian
russo
Paralympic Committee is unable to comply and abide by the rules when it comes to
demonstra
the IPC
que
doping
o
code
Comitê
and the World
Paralímpico Russo
Anti-Doping Code.
não pode cumprir nesse momento essas
At the
regras.
IPC Athletes Council,
No
we are
nosso conselho de
committed to
atletas do
protecting the
IPC,
clean
estamos
athletes.
comprometidos
their
em
health and
proteger
their well-being.
os atletas limpos.
Sadly,
Sua
the
saúde
state-sponsored doping system
E,
that is currently in place in
infelizmente,
Russia
o sistema
is
de
absolutely
doping
failing
que
them,
está em
putting
prática
everyone
na
at risk.
Rússia coloca todos em
facts
risco.
we have actually horrify me.
Os fatos
Athletes
realmente
appear
nos
to be
trazem
pawns in a
horror.
broken, corrupt system designed to show
Vimos
global
sistema quebrado e
prowess.
corrupto
because of the Russian government's desire to
E-
seek an unfair competitive advantage.
pelo
Their athletes
desejo
will now miss out on the opportunity to compete
Comitê
at
Russo
the biggest
de
stage of all.
buscar essas glórias sem
As a
pensar nas
five-time Paralympian in
consequências.
sledge hockey, I
Levou
can
a
only
todos
imagine the
um
disappointment
risco
Russian athletes must
desnecessário.
feel at this
Eu
decision.
imagino a decepção que os
However,
atletas
it
russos
is a
sentem nesse
decision that
momento, mas
has
é
been
uma
taken
decisão
in the
que
best
foi
interest
tomada
of ensuring
no
a
interesse
fair
maior
and level playing
de
field
garantir
for all
um
athletes.
sistema justo de competição.
At the same time as feeling great
Ao mesmo
sympathy
tempo
towards the Russian
que
athletes,
sentimos
we must not forget the feeling of
grande
those athletes
simpatia
from their nations
para os
who
atletas
competed
russos.
at the Sochi 2014 Paralympic Winter
Sabemos
Games.
que houve alguma coisa errada
Now that it
nos
has been
Jogos de
revealed that the sample
2014.
swapping regime in the
Vimos
Sochi
que
laboratory
esse
took
regime
place during the Paralympic Winter
de
Games.
troca de amostras
Some athletes may be
ocorreu
questioning
no,
whether
nos
results from the
Jogos de
Sochi
Inverno.
2014
Alguns
will change.
resultados talvez
My
mudem.
message to them is please be patient.
A minha mensagem
As
é,
you can
por
imagine,
favor,
the
tenham
IPC has
paciência.
started
Como vocês podem
has
imaginar,
a lot
o
to deal
IPC
with in
tem
recent weeks,
muito
and the Rio Paralympic
trabalho
Games
nos
are just
meses
31
adiante.
days away.
E os
The
jogos
IPC is planning to send every
estão
Russian
chegando.
sample from Sochi for further forensic
a
examination.
nossa ideia
At
é
the same
juntar
time,
todas as
they are
amostras
consulting the
disponíveis
IPC
dos Jogos
Anti-Doping
de
Code
Sochi para que
Committee
sejam
and the WADA
reavaliados.
regarding the measures
Estamos
that can be
trabalhando
taken to
junto ao
address
WADA
the Athletes Association, where these samples include results management.
para gerenciarmos
These
todas essas
are
amostras.
unprecedented circumstances
E
for
essas
sport.
circunstâncias são inéditas no esporte
Finally,
mundial.
Paralympic sport has
E,
always been about
finalmente,
true
o
sport,
esporte paralímpico
about the
sempre
true
foi
spirit
sobre o
of
verdadeiro
sport
esporte, o
and fair
verdadeiro
play
espírito do
for all.
esporte e condições iguais para todos.
It has never been about
Nunca
circumventing the rules at all costs, and
Ultrapassar
it never should
regras
be.
ou burlar regras
One of the
para
things they
atingir
really need to think about
resultados.
for anybody
algo
who
que
is
temos que
getting into
realmente
that aspect.
pensar.
Because you really need to think about the whole team.
Você precisa
If you
pensar
ever
no
decide
time
to play
todo.
outside the rules.
Se você
As somebody who played
burlar
in a
as
team
regras
sport,
e você
one of the
joga,
athletes
e
on
você
my
pensa
team
nos
did
atletas,
something wrong, I lost my medal
conjunto de
as well. And
atletas,
unfortunately, that's where we are today.
e se você burlou
Thank
as
you very
regras,
much.
todos os atletas vão pagar.
Thank you, Todd. That
Obrigado.
concludes the speeches. We will
Obrigado,
now open
Todd.
the floor for
Isso
questions.
conclui
If you
nossas
have a
falas.
question,
Vamos abrir para perguntas.
please
Se
raise your
tiver
hand and
alguma
state the name
pergunta,
of your
levante sua mão
publication and where you're
diga
from.
de qual órgão
Because of the
de
legal
imprensa
nature of
você participa.
the situation we're in, it's an ongoing live case, we may have to
Essa
revert to the
situação,
printed answers we have
como
before us because
muito dinâmica, talvez
we don't
tenhamos
really want to say
que
anything wrong. So we'll start with Rob
não
Harris.
responder algumas perguntas devido à natureza de investigação do caso.
Hi, Rob Harris from Associated Press.
Rob
Two
Harris,
questions,
Associated
Philip. One,
Press.
why didn't you
Uma.
speak out so strongly
Por
against
que
Russia
vocês
in the
não
vote
falaram?
of the IOC
Por que você não falou
last
mais
week?
duramente contra
And
a
secondly,
Rússia na semana
did you not have
passada?
reservations about
E
cozying up to
segundo,
Vladimir Putin in
você
2014,
não teve
given the
reservas
fact
em
he'd
se
already
juntar ou se unir
instigated the
tanto
invasion
ao
of
Vladimir
Crimea, yet
Putin
you still, despite
com relação aos
ongoing global
eventos da
condemnation
Crimeia,
at the time, were so supportive of him?
e você apoiou tanto o Vladimir Putin, por quê?
Taking the first question first.
A primeira pergunta,
That I'm here at the
eu estou
Olympic Games
aqui nos
as
Jogos
a member of the
Olímpicos como
International
membro do
Olympic Committee.
IPC,
And the International Olympic Committee Executive Board
e o
took
nosso
their decision.
conselho
I have to accept
dos Jogos
in good
Olímpicos me faz com que
I'm not a
eu
person
participe
that abstains on
das,
anything. I either vote for or I vote
das
against.
ocasiões dirigidas.
And as a member of the
E como
International
membro
Olympic Committee,
do
I
Comitê
have to
Olímpico
back my
Internacional,
board unless I am diametrically opposed to their
se eu não
decision.
for frontalmente oposto a uma
And
decisão,
therefore, I
eu tenho
was
que
not
apoiar as
diametrically
decisões.
opposed to their
E
decision
naquela
because
situação
they
eu não
decided
tinha
this was the best
essa posição,
decision for the Olympic movement.
porque o Conselho
therefore,
determinou
I
que era o
supported
melhor para os Jogos
my
Olímpicos. E, portanto, eu dei
we
apoio
look to,
à minha diretoria, ao meu
The
conselho.
IPC, that is a very different situation.
Agora, com relação ao
I'm the
IPC,
president of the
eu
IPC.
sou presidente
I
do
chair the
IPC,
governing board of the
eu
IPC,
sou membro
and I've been
diretor do
directly
conselho,
involved, along with
e
my
eu
fellow
estou
board
envolvido
members, with
diretamente,
every
junto com
part
os membros do
of the
conselho,
decision-making
de
process
todas
that
as
we've
partes
announced
do
today.
processo de decisão.
And I want to say that I've
E quero
never
dizer
been part of a
que eu
board
nunca
that
participei
is
de
normally,
conselho.
of course, we're never always united on all
Claro, nem
topics,
sempre
but is
somos
united,
uma unanimidade,
particularly on topics that
mas
affect
nesse caso
the
estamos
spirit of our sports movement.
unidos.
And therefore,
E,
as you've heard
como
all the
vocês
detail that I put
sabem,
forward and Todd put forward.
que
We had
eu levei
extensive
adiante, e o
discussions.
Todd levou adiante, e tivemos muitas
The
discussões.
president of the IPC
O
does not
presidente do
rule
IPC não
the IPC
decide
governing board. I
e
wouldn't
ele
know
não
how to.
reina
With the
sobre
members that we
o
have on it,
conselho.
I'd have no chance.
É uma
And
decisão
therefore,
coletiva.
we've come to this
E
agreement
chegamos
as
a
a team.
essa conclusão
a
como
united
uma
team.
equipe, uma
And
equipe
that's where
unida.
the difference lies.
E é aí que mora a
Our
diferença.
decision is
Nossa
for the
decisão
Paralympic movement
É para o
and the
movimento
Paralympic
paralímpico
Games.
e os Jogos
And I think
Paralímpicos.
I can say
E acho que
that the
posso dizer
IOC's decision
que a decisão
was for
do
the
Conselho
Olympic movement
Olímpico
and the
Internacional
Olympic Games.
foi para os Jogos
Moving
Olímpicos.
to your comment, which of course is
Quanto ao
quite
seu
journalistic
comentário,
by
que
saying
é
that
bastante
I'd been
jornalístico,
cozying up to Vladimir
que diz que eu
Putin.
estava muito
I think if
próximo do
I look
Vladimir
back on my
Putin,
career as
acho que se eu olhar
IPC
para a minha
president,
carreira como
I've
presidente
been
do
involved
IPC,
with
estive
heads of
envolvido com
state
chefes
of
de
every
Estado de todos
organizing committee.
os
have
comitês
You
organizadores
have to
e é uma
have a connection
necessidade
with the head of
é
state. If you don't
necessário
have, I think
ter
it's
uma
a sure
conexão
sign
com o chefe
that
de
the games
Estado.
are going to be a
E se
failure.
não for dessa forma, os
I
jogos
did
não
not
vão
cozy
ser
up to
sucesso.
Vladimir
Eu
Putin.
não estava
I can
muito
tell you
próximo a
that on
Vladimir
the
Putin.
4th of March,
Eu posso dizer que dia 4 de março
7th, on the 4th of March, I wrote to Vladimir
eu
Putin
escrevi ao Vladimir
and I
Putin
told him
e
that
eu
we were here
disse
for sport
que
and
estávamos
nothing
aqui
else,
para esporte e mais
and left it
nada.
at that.
E deixei
And then, of
nesse
course,
ponto.
throughout the games,
E
He
Durante
was
os
in
Jogos,
Sochi
ele estava em Sochi
throughout the Paralympic Winter
durante
Games.
todos
And
os
of course,
Jogos
at the opening
Paralímpicos de
ceremony and the closing
Inverno
ceremony
e a
and
abertura e o
at sports
fechamento das
events, at a
Paralimpíadas
luncheon that he
e todos
gave
os
for the
eventos
presidents and
esportivos e
secretaries
os
general
almoços que
of the
foram
National
oferecidos.
Paralympic Committees, there was interaction.
Houve
But that's quite
interação
normal
em todos esses
with any
eventos, que é
head of
muito
state
normal com
that
qualquer
is
chefe de Estado.
head of state of the nation that is staging the games. With regard to what has
Com
happened
relação
now, I
ao que
announced at the
acontece
closing
agora,
ceremony of
eu
the Sochi
anunciei
Paralympic Winter Games that
no
these were the
fechamento
greatest
dos
Paralympic Winter
Jogos
Games ever.
que foram os
And they
melhores
were at
Jogos
that
de
time.
Inverno de toda a
Now,
história.
on the new evidence,
E era
and
verdade.
we've already
E
said
com
that this is
todas
evidence-based,
as
our
evidências que
decision today,
surgiram
maybe
e a
I will
nossa
have to
decisão
review
agora, talvez eu
that
tenha que
remark.
revisar
But it was based
aquela
on the evidence
declaração.
to hand at the
Mas
time, and now we have new evidence today.
Era a informação que eu tinha na época.
Ricardo here.
Anything to add?
Just go in front. Ricardo.
Wakako Yuki from the Yomiuri Shimbun. Sir Philip, it was
Philip.
courageous a decision to the cause, following the cause.
Essa decisão foi para a causa
Very sharp contrast to
e foi contraste muito forte
Now, I also
com relação
decision, as I understand, focused on
ao outro
individual
órgão,
justice.
o
And
Comitê
also
Internacional.
IWF has these clauses to allow some athletes who could
Existem
prove
cláusulas que podem
themselves,
permitir alguns
could
atletas a
enter.
competirem.
What is your
Qual é
focus,
o seu
opinion on
foco
this
ou a
clause?
sua
And,
opinião
without it,
com
do you think
relação a
it
isso?
could withstand
Sem
the
isso,
legal actions?
sem isso
allow me
pode
to
ser
just one more, ask
objeto
one more
de
question. There is still time
de
between now to
causas
the
jurídicas
opening
contra
of the
essa
Paralympic
decisão.
Games in Rio.
Com relação aos Jogos Paralímpicos no Rio,
That IPC may consider
existe
reinstatement
a
of the
condição
RRC,
de reconsideração.
And could it be happening in the
Pode ser
foreseeable
que
future
aconteça
before
no
the
futuro,
opening ceremony? Thank you.
antes da cerimônia de abertura. Pode ser uma reconsideração dessa decisão.
Thank you.
Obrigado.
This whole sad day
Esse dia
and
muito
20
triste
days since we
e os
learned
20 últimos dias,
that
os últimos
there
dias
was,
que descobrimos
that parasport was
que o
involved
esporte
in the
paralímpico estava
revelations of
envolvido
the
nessas revelações
McLaren report
do
has
relatório
all the
McLaren,
time been about
sempre foi
our
sobre
member
nosso
and our
membro
member either abiding or not
e o
abiding
nosso membro
by
cumprindo
the
ou não
membership
cumprindo
rules
as regras
they have to comply with to be
participação
a member of the IPC.
que são exigidas de todos os membros do
It
IPC.
is not about individuals
Não é sobre
or
indivíduos
individual sports.
ou esportes
Our
individuais.
decision was based on whether our
Nossa
member, the
decisão foi
Russian
baseada
Paralympic
em
Committee,
se
can fulfill its
O
membership
Comitê Russo
obligations.
tem ou
Within
não
the current
condições de
state-sponsored
cumprir
doping system,
as
we
exigências.
believe
E
they
com
cannot.
relação ao doping no esporte, achamos que ele
With
não tem
regard to
condições.
what
Com
might happen
relação ao que
between now
pode acontecer
and the
entre
opening
agora
on the
e a
7th of
cerimônia de
September
abertura
of
no dia 7 de
the
setembro
Rio 2016
dos
Paralympic
Jogos
Games,
Paralímpicos de 2016 no Rio,
the Russian Paralympic Committee,
o Comitê Russo Paralímpico
but I know it anyway, have 21
tem
days
21
to
dias
lodge and to have an appeal heard
para
on their
entrarem
behalf.
com um recurso e terem
That,
o julgamento
at the
desse
moment, is
recurso.
all I wish to say
E
on that.
nesse momento é
Should
só
that
o que eu
appeal
quero
be
dizer sobre
upheld,
isso. Se esse
then
recurso vai ser
Things are
acolhido,
back to how they were
se
before
for
today.
acolhido, aí
But
sim
if it's not
tudo
upheld,
volta
then
como
the
era
Russian
antes.
team
E se não for,
of all 18 sports where
todos
they
os
had
18 esportes
will not be
onde
competing
tinham
in
atletas
Rio
russos, atletas paralímpicos
Do you have
russos,
anything
não
to add,
competirão em
Andrew, or
2016.
Todd? Okay, you're okay.
Tem mais alguma coisa a acrescentar?
Hi, Anton Volsky, Channel One Russia. Do you think you presented a couple
Vocês
of dozen
apresentaram
cases, but you are blocking
alguns
the whole
casos,
team?
mas vocês
Do
estão
you think
bloqueando
it's
todo o
fair
time da Rússia. Vocês
to-
acham
according
justo
to, I'm not speaking about clean athletes. Do you think it's
Estou
fair
falando de
to
atletas
block the
limpos.
clean athletes
Será que é
because
justo
of
bloquear
those
todos
cases?
esses
The same question
atletas?
we asked, 2
Perguntamos
weeks
isso
ago,
também
and after the
há 2 semanas.
CAS ruled that many clean
Depois
athletes now can participate. Do you think
que
that's the case? And we
O
will see
Conselho
the same
Olímpico decidiu
procedure
que alguns
as,
atletas
in the
limpos
Olympic
puderam participar das Olimpíadas. Será que
I'm
é
sorry
justo
to probably
banir
have to
todos os
answer that
atletas?
question in a very similar way to
Eu
the
peço
way I
desculpas
answered the
por responder
previous
essa
first
pergunta
part
da
of
mesma
the
forma que eu
question.
respondi
That
a
this is
outra.
not about
Mas
individuals
não é
and it's
sobre
not about
indivíduo.
individual
Essa
sports. This
decisão
is
não é
about a state-sponsored,
sobre atletas
two
individuais.
state-sponsored doping system.
Isso é
And
sobre
therefore this affects
sistema de doping
potentially the
promovido
whole of
pelo
Russia,
governo
but it
da
definitely
Rússia.
affects the Russian
E
Paralympic
afeta
Committee.
o
I think
Comitê
also
Paralímpico.
we've been able to show today,
E
and I
mostramos
wasn't
hoje,
aware of the information
eu
until
não
yesterday,
sabia dessa
that
informação até
already
ontem,
10 more
mas que 10
cases,
outros
samples,
casos e
have been
amostras
identified
foram
by McLaren in
identificados
his
pelo
ongoing
relatório McLaren
investigations.
e estão
So
sendo
this is not the end.
investigados agora.
I'm not saying it's the beginning,
Então, isso não é
but it's
o
highly
começo
likely
e
that
nem
there
é
will
o
be more
final.
information coming
Vamos
forward.
ter mais observações, mais informações no futuro.
This isn't about individual
Isso
athletes
não é sobre
cheating the system.
atletas
This is the system cheating the
individuais
athletes.
burlando ou
That's what we found in the
trapaceando.
evidence
Isso
so
é
far.
sobre, estamos falando sobre um sistema que está trapaceando.
Anton Leda for Russia One Channel. Can you please tell, do you have any proof
Vocês
available
têm
for public
alguma prova
of
disponíveis
what
para o público
was said? I mean,
do que foi
those
dito?
stretches. Maybe to show to public those bottles, or at
Talvez
least the photos
mostrar ao
of
público
those bottles.
essas
Is it
cápsulas.
possible?
É possível que vocês deem essas provas ao público?
The fact is that the
O
McLaren
fato é que o
report
relatório McLaren
has identified this as
identificou
clear evidence
isso
of
como
this
evidências,
second state-sponsored process.
como
If you consider
evidências de segundo
that
sistema
what
de
we understand
trapace.
to have happened in Sochi,
E
that before
se vemos que foi
competition
feito
at
isso
the
em
Sochi
Sochi,
Paralympic Winter Games,
nos Jogos de
an
Inverno,
athlete had to submit
atleta
a
tinha
clean
que
sample
submeter uma
of
amostra
urine
limpa
so
de
that that could
urina
be stored.
para que aquilo
I've already
fosse
stated
guardado.
that it has been proven by DNA
Já
that the
foi
clean samples
identificado
were
por DNA
from the athletes as stated.
que
So
eram dos atletas.
the proof cannot
Então,
be
a prova
by retesting
não pode
the
ser
samples because the
retestar
clean
aquelas
urine
amostras porque a urina
was then
limpa
used
foi
to test
usada para
the
teste.
athlete. And so another system has had
Então
to be
outro
found.
sistema tem que ser
And I
descoberto.
believe the IPC
E
governing
eu
board,
acho
maybe
que
you could come in
o
on this,
conselho
Andrew or Todd,
do IPC,
the,
talvez o
the
Todd
fact
tenha
that
alguma
tampering has
informação,
been
o Andrew,
proven
mas
when previously the bottles that
cápsulas,
contain the samples
quando
have been
analisamos,
designed to be tamper-proof.
foram
And
desenhadas
that this
para
is
que não fossem
consistent and
abertas.
consistent in the sense I've given you the
E
statistics
vimos,
that we already have
já
to hand.
passei as estatísticas
this
desses
is,
casos.
in my opinion,
E na minha
proof,
opinião,
and it's
que é uma
proof
prova,
in the opinion of Professor McLaren,
na opinião do
and,
professor
and that's all I
McLaren,
really can say. Is there anything that you wish
isso
to add?
prova o que está no
Once again,
relatório.
this is an ongoing legal matter.
Novamente quero
And
dizer
therefore
que
we
isso
cannot, at this moment,
é um
name
caso
the
que
athletes
ainda
who
está sendo
associated with the
investigado.
samples. We are, however, seeking advice and guidance from the
Estamos
IPC
ainda
Anti-Doping Committee
procurando
and from WADA
orientações de
regarding what
WADA
measures
e do
we can take
Comitê
regarding the results
Olímpico.
management
O que
of the
podemos
athletes
fazer para
implicated in the
gerenciar
investigation.
essas amostras?
Once we have all the correct legal
Quando
processes are in
tivermos
place,
todas
and having
as orientações jurídicas,
we will then be in a position to do
vamos
so.
estar numa
But
posição
at this point in time, we
de
cannot name any.
apresentar essas provas.
And I think I'd just like to come back because I
E
only
eu
told you
quero
half of the
só
story
falar, eu
with
só
regard to
contei
the
metade da
collection of
história.
clean urine so that the system
Houve uma
could be put
uma
into
coleta de
operation.
urina limpa,
But once the
mas
sample
depois
in
daquela
competition
amostra,
had been taken, the athlete
depois de uma
had to
amostra
take a
ser
photograph
coletada durante a
of the
competição,
bottle that the
tínhamos que tirar
what we
uma
assume was a
foto
positive
da,
sample
da cápsula,
so that that
do
bottle
que
could be
era
identified and
uma
then could be
amostra
put in the
positiva para que
process.
depois ela pudesse ser
swapping process.
identificada.
So there is proof.
Então
There's
existe
undoubtedly proof.
prova
And that's what's been acted upon.
E é por isso que tomamos a decisão.
Director of the laboratory, the whistleblower,
Não vamos esquecer que o
Professor Richard McLaren
delator dentro do laboratório, ele levou o professor McLaren a essas cápsulas que foram manuseadas de forma incorreta.
Owen Gibson from The Guardian. So Philip, you were very strong in your criticism of the Russian government and how they failed their athletes. Do you think it's credible that failure didn't go right to the top of government and to Vladimir Putin?
E o senhor tem confiança de que isso não foi até o topo, até o Vladimir Putin? Não tenho ideia.
John Ray from ITV News. A lot of people watching this
Muitas pessoas que
think
vão
that you
ver
have taken the tough
essa
decision
coletiva vão
that the
dizer que foi uma decisão
IOC
dura
flunked.
e que
Is that your
o
perception?
Comitê Olímpico Internacional falhou.
Not at all.
Isso é verdade?
Why not?
Não.
I'll say. It's not going to be a shorter reply. I think that already
Eu acho
we've
que
mentioned the difference
já falamos
in membership
da
structure
diferença
of
da
the two
estrutura de
organizations.
membros e como funcionam organizações, funcionam de maneiras diferentes.
And therefore,
Portanto,
the only body within Russia
a única
that we could
organização
address this to was the
que
Russian
podíamos levar
Paralympic Committee. The IOC, as you know,
essa questão
and
ao
I'm not
governo
speaking on
russo
behalf of them,
era o
is set up in a very
Comitê
different way.
Paralímpico.
They are individual members.
E eles
You'll have to
eles
speak to
têm
the
seus
IOC,
membros.
why they took that decision.
E
but
no
we
caso
have
do
two
Comitê Olímpico Internacional,
separate, autonomous,
tem que ser perguntado a eles
sports organizations.
por que eles agiram da
Therefore,
forma como
we
eles
took our
agiram.
decision
Nós somos
as we
completamente independentes e nós
should be
tomamos a decisão que achávamos correta.
With regard to
Com relação
discussion with the IOC on this situation,
a
I
discussões
can
com o
absolutely
COI
assure you, I did
com
inform
relação a esses
Thomas
assuntos,
Bach of our
eu não
decision
informei a
late
Thomas
on
Bach,
Friday morning here in Rio, and at
informei
no
ele
time has he or anybody from the IOC
e em nenhum
tried to
momento
influence our decision.
informei a ele na
Absolutely
sexta-feira a nossa
gospel
decisão e não houve tentativa dele
I
ou
think
de
I'm
qualquer
gonna leave it
pessoa
at
do
that.
COI de interferir nessa decisão.
Get back the yeah.
Sorry, but the same. It's not just about the bureaucracy of the. It's not just about the
Não é
bureaucracy
sobre a
of
burocracia
the separate
apenas
governing system.
dos
Surely,
dois
you've got the
sistemas
same
de governo.
report and two
Eles tiveram
totally
o
different
mesmo
outcomes.
relatório
You've
e
done the
tiveram
brave
duas
thing. You found
decisões
all the Russians. The IOC
completamente
have let
diferentes.
271 Russians
O
compete.
senhor fez a coisa corajosa de banir todos.
I've got to think about this because is it because
Eu tenho que
the
pensar
IOC can
nisso,
only go
porque
to
eu
the
não sei
international
se
federations?
se
The
o
Russian
COI
Olympic Committee
só
is not a
pode
member
ir
of the
às
IOC,
federações
even though it has
internacionais.
obligations
O
to it.
Comitê
I'm not going to get
Olímpico
into that. You need to
Russo, o
ask the
Comitê Russo
IOC on
não
it.
é
But
membro do
we have
COI.
taken the decision that we felt
E eu não
was
quero
right
entrar
for our
nesses
movement.
detalhes porque isso tem que ser perguntado ao COI.
Question over here. Mr. Bauer.
Aaron Bauer from Around the Rings. Earlier in some of your questioning, you
Durante
mentioned
as
that this highlights the
perguntas, o senhor
difference between the
mencionou
Paralympic
que
and
existe uma
Olympic
diferença
As a member of the IOC
entre os
yourself, are
movimentos
you possibly
paralímpico e
going to
olímpico,
talk to other IOC members
mas
to change the system? So
será
that
que
something like
vamos
this
ver
doesn't
alguma
happen
mudança
again,
no
where
sistema
you brought up
olímpico?
that the Russian Paralympic Committee could be suspended by the IPC because it's a member, whereas
Talvez
the
a
Russian
Rússia
Olympic Committee
seja
cannot legally be
realmente
suspended by
banida
the
ou
IOC because of its
suspensa
setup.
do IPC.
At this time, we've got so much
Nesse
on our
momento,
plate
temos tantas
with
coisas
regard
a
to this
resolver
and with regard to the
com relação a
organisation of the
isso
Paralympic
e com
Games here
relação
in
à
Rio. I'm not going to
organização
give
das
any time
Paralimpíadas
to
do
think
Rio,
about that.
que eu não vou ter tempo de pensar nisso agora.
If in the coming months
Se
and coming
nos próximos
years,
meses ou próximos anos
the IOC wish to have discussions
O
concerning
COI
how we are structured, but they know that already.
queira
You know,
discutir
the
sobre
IOC is
mudanças
the
em
IOC
estrutura,
and the IPC
mas
is
na
the
verdade o
IPC.
COI é o
I am an
COI
honoured
e o
member,
IPC é
not
o
an honorary
IPC.
member yet, but I'm an honoured member,
Eu sou
really, that I
membro
fit to be a member of the IOC.
do
But I am a
do
member of the IOC
do
because I'm
COI.
president of the IPC.
E eu
Very
sou
similar in a
presidente do
manner to
IPC.
how IF presidents can be, NOC presidents can be, and also athletes can be as members of the
E
IOC.
todos podem ser atletas, podem ser membros do COI e do IPC.
Ben Rumsby from the Daily Telegraph. Can you understand why we're
O
asking
senhor consegue
these
entender
questions about the
por que
difference between your
estamos
decision and
fazendo essas
IOC's
perguntas das
decision?
decisões do
Even if
COI
you
e do
don't
IPC?
necessarily agree with it, can you understand
Talvez
why
o senhor
we're pointing this out?
concorde, mas
And also, if you
o senhor
say that the
entende por que
IOC's
estamos
rules are
fazendo essas
different and
perguntas,
don't
não é?
currently allow Russia to be banned on a blanket basis, would
E
you have
talvez
preferred
o COI
the
não
IOC
tenha
had the same
condições
sort of
de
rules that
banir
you
todos os
have in
atletas
place that
russos?
has allowed you to do that? Would that be
E o
what
senhor
you would
teve
like to have seen if
condições?
possible?
You're really
O
keeping
senhor,
going on
o
this,
senhor
aren't you?
queria que o COI
but
tivesse condições
really,
de banir a todos? Os
of course I
senhores estão
understand where you're
insistindo
coming
nisso.
from. I'm not
É
stupid.
claro que eu entendo por que
but,
vocês estão fazendo essas
But I
perguntas.
think I have to stick
Mas eu
with,
tenho que manter
with what I've said.
a minha
That
posição e o que
I
eu
have no
disse.
authority except
Eu não
being a
tenho
member of
nenhuma
the
autoridade
IOC within the
sobre o
IOC.
COI.
It's quite
Eu sou
right that the
membro do
president of
COI.
the IOC is the chief spokesperson for that organization, as I am
O
here.
presidente do
And
COI
therefore,
é o
my
representante
interest,
do
since
COI.
I was in France and I got the
Eu estive
McLaren
na
report,
França,
and I'm not a
recebi o
speed
relatório
reader,
McLaren,
but I can
e eu
assure
não
you I
leio
read
muito
it
rápido,
super
mas eu
fast.
li
And the
o mais
only
rápido que eu pude.
reference
E a
to
única
para sport
referência
in that, we knew nothing about this. I'd
esportes
spoken to Craig
paralímpicos.
Reedy, Sir Craig Reedy, on the, not on the direction, the CEO can't direct me, but on our CEO asked me, look, you must speak and ensure that
dos membros
Professor
do COI.
McLaren looks
E
at
eles me
para sport
falaram,
as well as
vocês têm que
Olympic
verificar
sport
se
in
ele vai
investigations.
fazer referência
And,
aos esportes paralímpicos.
And all we had on
E a
that
única
day one,
referência
which
que
is
tinha
20 days ago, is one graph
e há
on
20
page 41.
dias foi
where
um
it had, I
gráfico
think it was
na
athletics
página
and
41.
another sport, and I can't differentiate between two in my
E
head,
eu
so
não
I'm not going to
lembro
say it. And the third one was
qual era o
parasport,
esporte,
with 35
mas
samples.
o
We then had
terceiro
to
gráfico
investigate
era sobre
everything.
os esportes
And
paralímpicos.
it's taken that, it's amazing the interaction
E é
between Professor
incrível a
McLaren's
interação
team and our
entre o
own,
time
when
do
so many
professor
international
McLaren e o nosso
federations
time,
with regard to the Olympic
com tantas
Games have been asking for
federações
the same
e
information.
todos
And
pedindo
therefore, of course, I
informações.
understand where you're coming
E eu,
from on
eu
this.
sei, eu
But
entendo
I've had
por
my
que vocês
plate
estão
full,
fazendo
as have
essas
the senior
perguntas,
staff
mas eu
members of the
estou muito
IPC
ocupado com
and
outras
the members
questões.
of the IPC governing board to deal with what we have in front of us.
Eu tenho que
I think the
resolver
difference
essas
is if you look
questões
at how the
antes de
IPC is
pensar
structured, we
em
are more structured like
estruturas.
an international federation, like the IAAF. And the IAAF held one of its members
Vemos
accountable
que
for not abiding by the rules. And that's exactly what we've done here.
dos órgãos
Our
que
member
governam,
is the Russian Paralympic Committee.
E no nosso
And they
caso,
have
o
not
nosso
abided
membro
by
é a
the IPC
Confederação Russa
Anti-Doping Code
e
or
não
the World
cumpriu
Anti-Doping Code.
o
And that's why
código
we've taken the
antidoping
decision that we have.
e por isso tomamos a nossa decisão. É muito simples.
Matt. Welcome to you one. Where's the microphone? Over here, please. We'll do Matt and then we'll do Martin.
Hello, Matt Slater from the Press Association. Phil, I think you did deal with this, but I was a
Acho
little bit
que
unclear.
foi falado sobre isso, mas não ficou muito claro para mim.
A huge part of the IOC
Uma
compromise
parte
was
grande
this whole mechanism
do
of allowing
COI
clean
ter
athletes to demonstrate their
tomado a
credentials
decisão
and
deles.
turn up here. I'm not sure if you are going to
Eu
do
não-
that. Is
eu não
there any
sei.
way that a Russian athlete, in the time they've
O
got,
COI
they've got plenty of time,
recolheu as
demonstrate
credenciais
that
dos
they've been tested
atletas
enough
banidos.
outside of Russia, they've got
Esses atletas
relevant
foram
number of
testados
doping tests,
fora da
wonderful
Rússia.
record, their whereabouts is fine, and they can be here. Are you going to have any
E
way
alguns atletas
for a
podem
Russian
estar
athlete
aqui. Vocês
to
vão
compete in the
tomar
Paralympic Games?
alguma atitude para que alguns atletas
I'd
russos
like to
vão
come
poder
back
competir
towards the end of
aqui
my
nos Jogos Paralímpicos?
delivery before, and really come back to
Quero
what
voltar ao
this
que
is all
disse
about.
antes e falar
This is about
sobre o que realmente isso se
Intentional
trata. Isso é
covering up of
sobre
intentional cheating
trapaça
on a
intencional
countrywide scale.
numa escala de
And
país
therefore,
inteiro.
yes, there will be
Portanto, sim,
individual athletes
haverá
that are probably
atletas
clean.
individuais que
But
são
I'm afraid
limpos,
until the
mas
system is
infelizmente
changed
até
radically
que haja uma
and we
mudança
can
no
count
sistema
upon the Russian Paralympic
e
Committee
podemos contar
entering
com o Comitê
athletes
Russo
into IPC competitions and the Paralympic Games
para
that
que
are
sejam
clean, then this is not something that
que
we
só
we
tenha
can accept.
atletas limpos.
I think I'm
Até
going to leave
esse
it there
dia,
at that.
até
But it's so
termos
fundamental
confiança
to
nisso,
what we're
não
about.
vamos
How would
poder
it seem,
aceitar
as has
inscrição
already
de
been said, I
atletas
think, by
russos.
Andrew or by Todd,
O Andrew já falou,
to an athlete
Todd,
that's lining up?
como vamos saber
Probably thinking, oh, that opponent's
quando
definitely been built.
vemos
Have no chance.
atletas se preparando para
Or
uma
what will
prova
it
e
feel
alguém
like
vai
for
pensar,
spectators to come
aquele
along
atleta que
and
está do
have
meu lado
definitely doubts in their
provavelmente
minds?
está dopado.
But even more importantly, how
E
will it
mais
feel
importante
to
ainda,
parents
como
of
vai ser
children and
para
grandparents?
os
I've
pais
got 3
de
young grandsons.
crianças ou avós de netos
Thinking that now
pensarem,
sport is being transformed
agora
into
o
this
esporte está sendo
doping
transformado
culture.
numa cultura
Should
de
they let
doping.
their children
Será que eu deixo meu
participate
filho ou meu
in what is a
neto
wonderful activity,
participar de uma
whatever
atividade
sport
que é
they
maravilhosa, qualquer
get
esporte que
excited about?
seja,
But they start saying no,
mas
just
eles
stick to
vão
your
começar a
computer,
pensar,
just
fique no
remain
computador que é
a
melhor.
couch potato.
E
We can't
fique
do that. This is
sedentário
far
no
bigger
sofá.
than the athletes
Não
that
podemos
will miss out.
permitir isso. É muito
on
maior
the
do que isso. Então esses atletas não vão
add to that as
participar
well.
dos jogos.
Just one quick comment. One
Só
of the things that
comentário
come up in
rápido.
our governing board
Uma
meetings and a
coisa
question
que
that was asked
surgiu no nosso
is
conselho
that can we be sure
é:
that
será
the
que vamos
athletes
ter
in the
certeza
qualification leading up to Rio
de que
were clean?
nos jogos de qualificação para os
As
jogos
an athlete,
os
qualifying
Jogos
for the
Paralímpicos,
games,
será que foram
and it's a question
limpos?
that I've been asked from other athletes as
Isso,
well, is how can
atletas
we
me
ensure
perguntam
that those
sobre
athletes were
isso.
clean in the qualification stages?
Será que os
So if
atletas
we look at
estavam
this report,
limpos
it's very in-depth,
nas
goes a lot of
eliminatórias?
years. So to sort of touch back to what Sir Philip
Falando
said,
em relação ao que o
it's
Sr.
not the
Philip
athletes, it's the
falou,
RPs, it's the Russian
não é
Olympic Committee
sobre
in terms of the
atletas,
process.
é sobre a Federação Russa.
Well, I just would like to mention that again, reinforce
Gostaria de
Sir
falar
Philip's
e
word.
reforçar
This is far
que
bigger
isso é
than
muito
any
maior
medal
do que
or
qualquer
than individual
medalha
athletes not being
ou
able to
atleta
compete during the
individual
Olympics.
que
This is
não
about the
possa
future of
participar dos
Paralympic
Jogos.
sport
Isso
and
é
how we
sobre o
want the
futuro
Paralympic
dos
sport to be
Jogos
seen and
Paralímpicos
perceived
e
by the
como
whole world from now
queremos
on
que esses Jogos
and the
sejam
future and
vistos
future
no
generations.
futuro e
So
por
we understand the
gerações
frustration.
futuras.
We are not happy in
Entendemos
this kind of
as
decision.
frustrações,
But
não estamos
we have been elected to
felizes,
represent our
mas
General Assembly,
estamos
our
aqui para
membership,
representar a nossa
and that's why we
Assembleia
took that
Geral
decision.
e por isso tomamos essas decisões.
Martin Ziegler from the Times, Sir Philip. Professor McLaren has revealed
Professor
that,
McLaren
although
revelou
he was
que
in depth contact with the International Paralympic Committee.
ele estava
Actually, the IOC never
envolvido
contacted
com
him. Does that surprise you?
o
Would
IPC,
you urge them
mas
to
o COI
speak?
nunca falou
No?
com ele. O senhor recomendaria que o COI falasse com o professor McLaren?
Again, you're asking me to comment
Mais uma vez,
on the
estou
IOC,
sendo
and again, of course, you're like a
me
dog
pedindo
with a
para eu
bone here,
comentar
all of
sobre
you.
o COI. E não
It's
vou
not something that I
fazê-lo.
really do wish to do, because I think
Não
it's
vou
far better
fazê-lo
answered by the
porque
IOC
acho que o
themselves.
COI pode responder de forma muito melhor.
But all I can tell you is
Mas o que eu
that we
posso
knew
lhe
nothing
dizer
about this until,
é que não
what time was
sabíamos
it in
disso
France? It must have been about
até
9 o'clock in the morning.
Até na
And I
França.
presume our staff in Bonn were reading the same report on the
E
18th.
lemos o relatório no dia 18.
We were in touch with Professor McLaren on that day.
Entramos em
We had to be.
contato com
All we had in
o
front of
professor
our eyes were
McLaren
35 samples in
porque tínhamos
parasport, where we thought, well,
35
what does that mean?
amostras
You know,
de esportes
is it true?
paralímpicos.
Can it be
E o que
verified?
isso quer
What
dizer?
are the final numbers?
Isso pode ser
Are
verificado.
there any figures
São
from
números
Sochi? Because they
finais.
weren't included at the time at all.
Existem provas sobre
And in
Sochi.
fact, it was, I think, a specific
acho
side of
que
things that report was
Aquele
specifically dealing
relatório
with,
estava
well, not
tratando
specifically, but particularly
especificamente
dealing
ou
with the
particularmente
Sochi Olympic and
falando
Paralympic
sobre os
Winter
Jogos
Games.
de Sochi.
And so we've had no time to think about, in a sense, others outside of our movement or outside of what we're responsible for. And we've had 20 days to get where we are so far today. We expect things to continue to develop, as I think most people do, whether it's in Olympic or Paralympic sport. But I think that's where we are. I would just want to say one thing, that if the IOC then contacted McLaren, then doesn't it make sense that it is each international federation that contacts McLaren with regard to Olympic sport? But we are dealing with our national member, and
Mas
that's why we
estamos
took
lidando com membro nosso e por isso tomamos as decisões.
Okay, we'll just take this final question and then we will wrap it up.
Responder a última pergunta.
Hi, I'm Gabriel Elizondo from Al Jazeera TV channel. Could you characterize the Russians' response over the course of the past several days, and specifically when you told them about your final decision? Could you characterize their response? Number one, what was their main defense? And number two, have they mentioned that they plan to appeal?
E eles disseram se vão recorrer?
I think people thought that
As pessoas pensavam
that we had already informed a certain
que já havíamos
newspaper
informado jornal
at least one day ago or 2 days ago
dia
of
ou há
our
2
findings.
dias
I can
sobre
absolutely state to you that we
nossas
hadn't.
conclusões.
And it
Isso
had
não é
always been
verdade.
our intention,
Nossa intenção
and we did
sempre
that,
foi
to inform the Russian Paralympic Committee
informar a
a couple of
Rússia
hours before this press conference
umas
took
2
place.
horas antes
That is in
dessa
fact what we
coletiva
have
de
done,
imprensa. E foi isso
and
que
we've had,
fizemos.
as far as I'm aware, but I've been here since,
E eu estava aqui desde
no
então.
knowledge. I don't know if, Craig,
Mas
you
não
have any
sei
knowledge on
se-
that?
We informed them an hour ago and we've been in
Não,
here, so we
informamos
don't
há
know what the
uma hora
reaction is or
atrás
whether they're planning to appeal. I'm
e
sure when
não
we switch
sabemos
our
a
phones on
reação,
after this press
não
conference, we'll have
sabemos
that
se
answer.
vão
And I
recorrer.
cannot, for legal reasons,
E eu não
discuss
posso,
the
por
details of
razões
our
legais,
discussions, but I think from
entrar
stating
em
with you
detalhes sobre as nossas
that we had
discussões.
3 hours
Mas
of an
tivemos
exchange
3
and
horas
interchange
de
between the two organizations
troca
last
de
Wednesday, which
discussões,
was the 3rd of
que
August.
foi no dia 3
We
de
had our
agosto.
deliberations. The total meeting
Tivemos
for the board
deliberações
lasted 5.5
e
hours.
uma reunião
We had a
do
member
conselho que durou
in
5
Western
horas.
Canada that I think had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
E
And at the end of the meeting,
estava no
our member in
Canadá.
New Zealand went to bed at 5:30 and
O
had to get
membro
up
do
at 7
Canadá
o'clock to
tinha
go
que
to
acordar
work.
muito cedo.
So, you know, that
Então,
was the summation of things.
Foi,
I'm not
foi
at
o
liberty to
resumo
say
das
what was
coisas. Eu
discussed,
já passei o
but there
resumo,
was
não posso falar o que foi
a
discutido.
clear exchange
Mas
of
foi uma
information.
troca
And
muito
I
clara de
thank the Russian
informações.
Paralympic
E
Committee for that.
agradeço ao
At the end
Comitê
of the
Paralímpico
3-hour
Russo,
part that they were involved in that
que
5.5 hour
depois
meeting.
dessas
Great.
reuniões todas,
Thank you very much,
eu
everyone.
agradeço
What
a
we'll do
todos.
now is we're going to take a bit of a break
Vamos
and then we will
ter
commence doing some
pequeno
interviews. So,
intervalo
for broadcasters,
depois
if you want to
fazer
do a
algumas
one-on-one,
entrevistas.
depending on the demand, we'll see
Se
how many we
for
can
do
do,
interesse
and then we'll probably do
fazer
some cool interviews. But we're going to take a
entrevistas
10-minute break
individuais,
now,
vamos poder
just
entrar
to
num acordo,
But
mas
I've got a
vamos
final
ter
word to
intervalinho.
say.
E eu
Coming
quero dar a
back
última palavra.
to this point, what is the underlying principle
Qual é o nosso
underlying all
princípio
of
que
what we
rege
have
tudo
discussed
isso que
today?
discutimos
It
hoje?
is in fact
É, de
that to
fato,
world sport
que
and now
o
to
esporte
parasport,
mundial
there's
e o
a great,
esporte
great
paralímpico,
threat to
existe uma
the
ameaça
future
ao
of what
futuro
we would view
do
is
que
the
vemos
sporting spirit
como o
for
espírito
all.
do esporte.
That cannot be allowed
Isso não pode ser
to change.
permitido.
Fair
alterar
competition, fair play,
a
abiding
competição
by the
justa,
rules is fundamental.
seguindo regras.
And if we start slackening off on that, we're
Começarmos
finished.
a deixar correr,
So we're not going to.
estamos
Thank you.
terminados.
We'll leave there. Thank you,
Então não
everyone.
vamos fazê-lo. Obrigado.
Sobe lá para ajudar no microfone. O microfone dele caiu.